Part 5. The Material Foundations. Chapter 13. Energy. Civilization's Hidden Currency. Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that electricity no longer exists. The lights do not turn on, the refrigerator is silent, the internet is unavailable, the water system no longer functions properly. Gas stations cannot pump fuel. Hospitals struggle to operate. Supply chains begin to stall. Within hours, ordinary life starts to unravel. Within days, the disruption becomes profound. Most people rarely think about energy, not because it is unimportant, because it is everywhere. Like water to a fish, energy surrounds modern life so completely that it often becomes invisible. We notice it primarily when it disappears. Yet beneath nearly every feature of civilization lies a simple reality. Work requires energy. Movement requires energy. Transportation requires energy. Communication requires energy. Manufacturing requires energy. Agriculture requires energy. Civilization itself requires energy. In earlier chapters, we explored stories, beliefs, identities, trust, institutions, and incentives. All of these matter. Yet none can function independently of the physical world. A civilization must feed itself. Heat buildings, move materials, produce goods, power infrastructure, maintain systems. The deeper we look, the more we discover that energy sits beneath nearly everything. At first glance, this observation may seem obvious. Of course, civilization requires energy, yet its implications are surprisingly profound. Many people think of civilization primarily in terms of ideas, politics, economics, culture, technology. These things matter, but they all operate within physical constraints. No amount of legislation can repeal the laws of thermodynamics. No amount of cultural optimism can substitute for insufficient energy. The physical world ultimately imposes limits that every civilization must respect. Human history can, in many ways, be understood as the story of expanding access to energy. For most of history, the available sources were relatively limited: human muscle, animal muscle, wood, wind, water. Civilizations grew slowly because the energy available to them was limited. Then something extraordinary happened. Human beings learned to unlock vast stores of concentrated energy: coal, oil, natural gas, later hydroelectric power, nuclear energy, and increasingly diverse sources of electricity generation. The result was not merely technological progress. The result was an explosion of civilizational capability. Factories emerged. Transportation accelerated. Agricultural productivity increased. Cities expanded. Living standards improved. Scientific research intensified. Communication networks spread across the globe. Modern civilization became possible because vastly larger amounts of energy became available. Seen from this perspective, many familiar achievements begin to look different. A skyscraper is not merely architecture. It is concentrated energy. A modern hospital is not merely medicine. It is concentrated energy. A global supply chain is not merely logistics. It is concentrated energy. Even the digital world depends upon physical infrastructure powered by energy. The cloud turns out to rest on power plants. This realization challenges a common illusion. Modern societies often behave as though information is replacing physical reality, as though software has somehow escaped material constraints. Yet every email, every video, every search query, every artificial intelligence model ultimately depends upon physical systems consuming energy. The digital world floats atop a physical foundation. The relationship between energy and complexity is especially important. Simple societies require relatively little energy. Complex societies require much more. Every layer of organization adds demands. Roads, hospitals, universities, data centers, transportation networks, water systems, financial systems. Each depends upon continuous flows of energy. The more complex a civilization becomes, the more dependent it becomes upon maintaining those flows. This helps explain why energy disruptions can have such widespread consequences. Energy occupies a uniquely central position within civilization. Problems in one industry may remain localized. Problems in energy often propagate outward. Because energy supports the functioning of so many other systems simultaneously. It is not merely another sector. It is an enabling foundation. A useful way to think about energy is as civilization's hidden currency. Money helps coordinate economic activity. Energy makes economic activity physically possible. Money can allocate resources. Energy allows resources to be transformed. The two are related, but they are not the same. A society cannot spend its way around an energy shortage indefinitely. Physical realities eventually assert themselves. This does not mean energy is the only thing that matters. Civilizations require ideas, institutions, trust, culture, knowledge. Human creativity remains enormously important, yet creativity itself operates within physical constraints. Possibility expands when energy expands. Constraint becomes more visible when energy becomes scarce. A pattern should now be becoming visible. Throughout this book, we have repeatedly moved beneath the surface. Behind institutions lay trust. Behind trust lay identity and shared belief. Behind shared belief lay stories. Now we discover another layer beneath them all: the physical foundation. Energy makes the entire structure possible. Without sufficient energy, civilization cannot sustain the complexity upon which it depends. This realization can produce a different kind of perspective. Many public debates focus on visible outcomes: prices, policies, politics, technologies. Yet beneath these discussions often lie deeper physical realities: energy availability, resource flows, infrastructure, constraints. The visible world frequently rests upon foundations that remain largely unseen. One of the central lessons of civilization is that success often hides its own preconditions. When systems function well, people stop noticing what supports them. Electricity becomes invisible. Water becomes invisible. Supply chains become invisible. Energy becomes invisible. Only disruptions reveal how much depended upon them all along. Closing orientation. Civilization is not merely a social achievement, it is also a physical achievement. Stories create meaning. Trust creates cooperation. Institutions preserve knowledge. But energy makes all of those things operational. It powers the systems that sustain modern life. The deeper we look, the more we discover that energy is not simply another resource. It is one of the foundational conditions that allows civilization to exist at all. To understand civilization, we must learn to see the invisible flows of energy that make visible achievements possible. If energy provides civilization's physical foundation, another question naturally emerges. How do all of these interconnected systems function together? How do billions of people, countless institutions, and vast networks of infrastructure coordinate across time and space? And why do complex societies often appear both remarkably resilient and surprisingly fragile? To answer those questions, we must explore the nature of complexity itself.